Human resources, human capital, people, and culture. This single vocation has many names. HR professionals are responsible for what is arguably the most critical success factor within any organization. It's talent. HR Studio Podcast brings you bi-weekly interviews with HR executives, thought leaders, authors, speakers, and trend spotters from the world of HR and beyond. Listen, learn, and leverage. Welcome to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. HR Studio is brought to you by A.J. O'Connor Associates, a trusted human capital consulting partner to emerging, mid-market, and world-class organizations. For over 35 years, AJO has built its reputation on experienced listening, exceptional quality, and caring partnerships, delivering services in 30 states and 20 countries. To learn more, visit us at ajoconnor.com and be sure to check out our top-ranked HR blog and sign up to receive email alerts while you're there.
So welcome to HR Studio Podcast, everyone. I'm Fred Buncer, your host for today's episode. I'm very excited to be joined today by Neen James. All 4 foot 10.5 of her. She's with us today. She's the author of 9 books, including Folding Time, and her most recent book, as you can see in the background there, is called Attention Pays. In 2017, she was named one of the top 30 leadership speakers by Global Guru because of her work with companies like Viacom and BMW and Pfizer and Comcast and even the FBI, among others. Her background is in learning and development and managing teams. She's worked in banking and telecom and the energy industries. What she does and why we asked her to join us today is she helps companies implement strategies around how to avoid distractions for employees, stop interruptions, prioritize daily objectives, and to get people to learn how to say no to all those things that steal our time and our focus and prevent us from reaching our goals. On a personal front, Neen collects fabulous shoes. We'll have to take her word for that today. And she claims that she works just to support her travel habit. She's addicted to her Peloton. She claims it's the bike that goes nowhere. She's also a certified professional speaker and an unofficial champagne taste tester. So, Neen, welcome to HR Studio Podcast.
What a treat to be on your show. I have been so excited about this opportunity.
We are thrilled to have you. And tell me, how did this unofficial champagne taste tester come about? Is that did you work long and hard for that designation?
It's obviously a self-proclaimed title, so I feel a need to make sure that all champagne around the world is tested adequately. Therefore, I've made it my personal mission to ensure that I get to taste champagne all over the world.
Excellent. As you might be able to tell from Neen's voice, she's from Sydney, Australia, and now a U.S. citizen, so congratulations.
I am, yes. We should also probably warn your listeners that I may sound like I'm 5, but significantly older than that, as you can tell if you watch video.
So my first question is regarding your new book, Attention Pays. Who taught you how to pay attention?
You know, the best lesson I ever had in paying attention was from a 5-year-old. And so when you think about the way that kids pay attention, you know, Fred, I was simply sitting in my next door neighbor's house. Eileen lives next door. She has a 5-year-old called Donovan. Eileen and I were just trying to have a cup of coffee. You know, like what that's like. And Donovan just kept inserting himself into the conversation, asking me all these questions. And then I would answer him, but I wasn't giving him my whole attention. He got so frustrated, Fred. He jumped up into my lap. He grabbed my face and he turned it towards him and he said, "Neen, listen with your eyes." 5. I mean, the wisdom of this child. And it was a great lesson for me and for leaders, especially when you think about in HR, where we are constantly being asked for advice. We're constantly being able to support other people. We need to stop what we're doing and listen with our eyes so that human feels like they are the most important part of our whole day. So it was Donovan, a little 5-year-old, who taught me how to listen with my eyes.
And then how did that to go from Donovan to a new book? I mean, that's quite a journey. What were some of the key steps along the way, and how did you uncover the content?
Fred, I've always been obsessed with productivity. So in my corporate career, I worked in retail, banking, telecommunications, and the oil industry. And in corporate business in Australia, not a lot of chicks in oil, right? And so what I realized was the people that were getting ahead, the people that were getting promoted were very productive. And so I made it a mission to truly nail that. And then it became almost intuitive to me. I didn't even know that people would value that as much as they did until I started my own company. And then I would help companies become more productive as a keynote speaker, running workshops, and consulting to executives. And so for me, I've always been obsessed with this idea around productivity. But what I realized through all the work I do with my corporate clients, with some entrepreneurs, really creative people, it doesn't matter who they are, we can't manage time. Time's going to happen whether you like it or not. We can't manage time. However, we can manage our attention. And I believe that attention is the vital conversation right now. We're living in a time, as you said earlier, everyone's so distracted, right? We don't know how to say no. We run from one meeting to the next. We've got social media, we've got email, we've got notifications. We're so exhausted. And I realized people needed strategies not to manage time, to manage their attention. And that's how Attention Pays, our latest work, came about.
Interesting. So in the book, you talk about, a lot of things, but one of the things that jumped out at me was your distinction between personal attention, professional, and global. So tell us a little bit about the differences between those three.
Sure. Personal attention is really who deserves your attention. This is about being thoughtful, being a good human, really thinking about who's in front of me and who needs my attention right here, right now, and looking for ways as HR leaders, how do we be more thoughtful in our everyday, using people's names and acknowledging and recognizing people. That's personal attention. Professional attention is about what deserves your attention, meaning how do we be more productive? So what are the right things to focus on in order for you to get things done? And then globally, it's about how we pay attention in the world. And that's truly about being more responsible and being a contributor, whether it is in our community or maybe it's in the greater world. So personally is who deserves your attention. Professionally is what deserves your attention. And globally is how you pay attention in the world. Be thoughtful, be productive, and be responsible.
Excellent. And for those of you following along at home, that's called tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. That is brilliant. So is it a clear linear progression? Do I have to start with personal before I can get global, or can I start at global and come back to personal?
I think about all of the things that require your attention in a day, Fred. You've got emails, meetings, phone calls, text messages, social media, your partner, children, everyone wants your attention, right? So you've got to make choices in that moment. And it could be that you're standing in the line waiting for your coffee and the barista deserves your attention at that point in time, right? It could be that you're driving your car and maybe the other cars on the road deserve your attention instead of updating your Facebook status. So there's so many, I think you've got to choose what moment you're in. But I do believe that it starts with who first. Because when we really think about when we're time starved and we only have a small amount of time, it's the people that are most important to us that deserve that. Right? When you have all the time in the world, you can clear all your inbox, you can go to every meeting, you can reply to every proposal. But as HR leaders, we have to think about how precious that time resource is and that moment. And we might only have that one interaction with that team member or that one opportunity to help counsel them on a particular challenge or that one opportunity to explain benefits to them. So we want to make the most of it in this moment. So I don't know that it's a progression. I think that you have to make choices and take action in the moment.
And so how do you counsel and coach people, Neen, on what are some of those priorities and where, because in the moment, the urgency of things, they can all seem important. How do you help people make prudent decisions about things?
When you think about as HR leaders, we have often measurements that we're striving towards. We have performance reviews, we have calibration, we have all of these different opportunities throughout the year to assess performance for ourselves, but also for the people we serve. And so if you think about just yourself as an HR leader right now, and I use the word leader for everyone, I think everyone who does what people do who listen to your podcasts are leaders in their own community, in their home, and in their work. And so I think what they have to do is identify what are they being measured on and then work from there. So, for example, an easy thing to do, Fred, and I do this every single day, is invest 15 minutes at the top of every day determining what are your 3 not negotiable activities. So before your head hits the pillow tonight, what are 3 things you must do that will move you closer to your goals? And that's the key, because you're right. There's so many things that are perceived as urgent, but the challenge is, as Covey would say, urgent versus important.
Right.
And sometimes the important things get dropped. And so we need to really make choices around what we're going to say yes to, right? Which means we have to say no to the things that don't matter. And we have to have the courage, as you said in the introduction, we have to have the courage to say, this is not a priority. This is not an important investment of my attention right now. Because I believe in ROA, which is return on attention. We only get this moment right now. Let's make the most of it and get an ROA.
All right, return on attention. So for our audience who's largely in the HR space, and we're getting requests from our business partners to support them and to help them and hopefully to help them be more strategic, how do we say no in the places where we think that it's not a good use of our time, or it'd be better for someone else to do that? What do you have some methodologies or some ways you coach people on how they can have that managerial courage to say no or to push back?
Sure. Yeah. Think about the role and how HR has changed over the years. HR used to be the one-stop shop for everything people-related, right? Whether it was a benefits question or whether it was succession planning, it took everything. And so the HR professionals had to have this huge scope. Many organizations now are realizing HR is such a specialty that they have a benefits department. They might have an employee call center. They have someone who does the calibrations, the strategic planning, all of these things. So now what we've got to think about is, what are we as an HR leader contributing to? What are we delivering, right? If, for example, you have come to a place in your career where maybe the leadership is asking you to go to a lot of meetings with them because you're now a very strategic, trusted advisor, but you keep getting asked all these benefit questions, which you have other people who can answer those. These benefit questions might be directed to an employee service center. They might be directed back to a frequently asked questions site on your particular intranet. So you've got to think about how can you leverage the resources that are already in place, which means re-educating those internal clients who are used to coming to you for everything. Yeah. So it might be the first time you say, hey, I'd love to help you with this time, but next time, what I encourage you to do is go to the employee service center, go to the online site, go to the frequently asked questions, read this PDF. So maybe the first time you give them some grace, but the second time, because you know what people are like, they're like, oh, it's just quick at ask, Fred. Just quick at ask, Neen, right? You have to have the courage to say, happy to help you this time, but just so you know for next time, and then start to kind of wean them off you. But the other thing I want to encourage people to do is, especially in HR, is if you have a team of HR leaders, have some specialties so you can refer people to each other and say, hey, Neen's really great in calibration. Fred's really great when it comes to truly looking at the succession plan for specifically mid-level managers. So if you develop a skill set you become known for, then share out the rest with others.
So refer them to colleagues who can help them in their area of specialty.
Exactly.
Okay. What do you have any views on why it's hard for people to say no, or what gets in the way? Is it a mindset, or what's your thought on that?
Think about why we go into HR. We go into HR because we want to help people. Mm-hmm. We choose to be in a role of service and support and care. It's how we're wired. HR people can't help it. We want everyone to do well. We kind of like people. Most of the time we like people. And so when you think about that as our key driver, that also for some of us, it makes us more inclined to be people pleasers. So we get scared of saying no. We think, oh gosh, if I say no, they won't come back to me again. Or if I say no, they won't like me. If I say no, maybe, they won't think highly of me. Maybe they won't say kind things to my boss about me. So we get scared of saying no to people because we don't want to disappoint them. We want to be liked, right? Okay. And I think we have to have the courage to say, if it's not no, maybe it's no, not right now. So I'd love to help you with that right now, but I'm engaged in this other activity. Can we connect at 3:00? So maybe you start small. Or maybe you say, hey, I'd love to help you with that. I'm not the best person for you. But you know what? Kyle would be a great resource in this particular project. How about you chat to Kyle? Okay. So like you said earlier, referencing others. I think the reason we don't do it is we don't want to disappoint people. We don't want to let them down. We want to be seen as a team player. And that's all great, except we're being measured on our results. We're being measured on what we're looking to achieve and not everyone else. So you have to keep coming back to what's my contribution as an HR leader? What am I being measured on? And start there.
Okay. And would you consider that to be, going back to your initial thoughts, would that be your professional focus?
Yeah, I would think so.
Productivity?
And the other thing is, too, think about how our business partners, their needs shift. So what you might decide are your goals for January, by kind of second quarter, the business may have changed. Things might have happened in the industry. Maybe you've had some challenges attracting the kind of talent you want. Maybe you're having challenges retaining the talent that you've attracted. So being able to check in with those business partners on a quarterly basis is also vital, because if you stay in front of them and say, hey, here's what I'm thinking our direction is for this quarter, you can then help them set what the priorities are. But that's also a great opportunity for you to say, hey, we were working on this. This doesn't make as much sense anymore. Let's put that aside and start focusing on this. It's proactively educating your business partners. So it makes it easier to say no in the long term as well, because they're in alliance. They're kind of aligned with what you're trying to achieve as well.
Okay. Also, I think in the book you talk about that word alignment made me think of, you've got a framework, I think, that you have in there about aligning some teams and being able to execute faster. Any insights for our audience on those topics?
Yeah, when you think about kind of what you're all working towards, some of the framework is still around kind of the choices you make and the actions you take, right? So you have to make very deliberate choices around what actions you're going to take in order to transform either the policy, the procedure, the team, the environment, the culture. I really believe in creating a culture of intentional attention. And there's a case study in the book of Johnson & Johnson. Alex Gorski, as many people may know, is their CEO and chairman. And what's interesting about Alex is Alex has decided that healthier employees make a healthier bottom line. And so he's very focused on the people side of J&J. Now, this is a worldwide billions and billions of dollars company, but what Alex has decided that if he has tired leaders, they're boring leaders. And so
leaders equals boring leaders.
That's what he says. And what's interesting about Alex, too, is he's always encouraging his senior leadership team to, when they walk into their home, put their device away and connect with their family. He's saying to them, don't send emails at nighttime because I want you to connect and really re-energize for the next day. He says that there's not things that are that urgent. Why can't it just wait until the next day? And so he's really trying to model and encourage work-life. Now, I don't believe in work-life balance because I think that's a bit of a myth, but I do believe in what Alex is trying to do, and I would call that work-life integration. So a framework for teams who really want to create a culture of intentional attention is really thinking about how are we sending these messages out as leaders? Are we emailing people late at night? Are we asking for meetings at 5 o'clock on a Friday? What are the things we're requesting? And then look to say, hey, is that the kind of environment we want to role model? And as HR leaders, we have to often have those tough conversations with leadership to say, hey, this person needs a break. This person needs vacation time. We need to be kinder. Every time we send an email at night, we're stealing minutes from them with their family. We have to think about these things.
So what would you counsel the leader on who says, I'm productive from 10 to 12 at night at home, and that really gets me to sleep better because I can get all those things off my to-do list? How do you account for that?
You can write the email, just don't send it.
Okay.
That's the key, right? And think about it. So many of my executives are very, very productive after hours, and I appreciate that. And I would say that's just your style. Doesn't mean the team should suffer accordingly. So one of my executives I work with in a media company, they used to have bets on how late they would get an email from him at night. And he just basically didn't sleep, right? And so basically the head of the media company hired me to say, we're actually worried about his health. Like, he's a high performer and, you know, he was in charge of a multi-million-dollar business unit. And what I asked him to do was, hey, if you're going to work these insane hours, that's your choice. but I can't have you sending emails. I can't have you making requests. I can't have you calling meetings at these stupid times. And he eventually agreed. I also sent him and his family on a holiday to like an island, so he would have to be off his technology. And when he came back, he was like a new leader, Fred. And I think what happens is we get into these bad routines, these habits, and we feel like we have to be seen to be working. I'm saying in inverted commas. You know, we have to send emails at stupid times so it looks like we're working hard. Well, it looks like you're out of control. That's what it looks like. So I want to encourage leaders not to do that.
It's the electronic version of FaceTime, staying in the office as late as possible just so you can be seen, you know, working, quote unquote, working hard.
Crazy. That's crazy. It's the same, Fred, I always say to my executives. When they eat their lunch at their desk, they look like they're out of control. They don't look like they're making the most of the moments. They look out of control. They don't even have 15 minutes to have lunch. It's unhygienic, for one. They look out of control, for two. And they're also sending a subtle signal to everyone else. That's how we do business around here. So if you are an HR leader and you feel guilty about taking a lunch break, grab someone else and pretend to have a meeting. I don't care, but get away from your desk because you look out of control.
Okay, you're making me feel guilty here, and it's hitting a little too close to home.
Good.
I have crumbs on my keyboard, I must admit.
We all do it from time to time. I just don't want people to make it a habit.
Okay. All right. Well, we're coming up on our time here, and so Neen, I just want to just say, is there one final idea, anything we haven't covered, or anything that you would say for a next generation HR leader, or really for any kind of leader? Is there anything that you would encourage them to think about or do differently that would help them to pay better attention and to be more productive?
There is so much conversation about the generations in the workplace, and I think we look at this in a negative way, not a positive way. And I want to say to people, understand the generation you're from and the way that they love to pay attention, and then adjust your style accordingly. Also be aware that at the end of the day, we all crave attention. We all want attention. Doesn't even have to be a lot of attention, just attention from people who are important to us. So as a leader in HR, regardless of where you are in your journey, if you decide who is important and deserves your attention, what is important and what deserves your attention, and how you're going to pay attention in the world, and you make a deliberate, conscious choice, you'll be more intentional with your attention, because it's my belief that when you pay attention, attention pays.
Oh, excellent. Well, Neen, thank you so much for joining us today. For those of you who'd like to learn more about Neen and get her book, you can access the resources that we're going to make available on our show notes. You can simply visit hrstudiopodcast.com, and there you'll be able to find links to Neen and to where she's going to be speaking. And Neen, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We really appreciate it.
It was a privilege. Thank you for everything you do in the world.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to HR Studio Podcast, building the next generation of HR leaders. To discover additional information from this week's episode and to catch up on all episodes, visit hrstudiopodcast.com. Subscribe to the HR Studio Podcast list while there and receive alerts and future updates.